Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
New year, new me. What's up? I'm just kidding. Same old BS as always. What's up?
I didn't know we were going to get a jingle. I did not.
Oh, I hope Lexi's probably gonna edit that out. But welcome to the Pro Physique Code, officially 2025. God, I feel old now. Uh,
Right? Right?
I mean, so what's up, guys? How gals, ladies, women's? How has the new year been treating you? Whoa.
So we literally had a podcast go out today. So today is January 2nd for us, but we had our first podcast of the year go out today about New Year's resolutions. And I was all like, I'm in a cut. What am I going to do this year? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And then 12 hours later, I signed up for an ultra. And so I
Yeah,
had chosen,
you definitely are like, I'm gonna think about the adventure that I choose. And
yeah,
I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna take time. Like this is gonna be like a little bit of navigating months.
yeah.
And you're like, just kidding.
Fuck that. No, they literally, this company posted on New Year's Eve and they were like, want to make a bad decision tonight? Sign up for this ultra. Registration opens at midnight. And the next morning over coffee, like I had seen that and then woke up the next morning and was like, yep, that's exactly what I want to do. So it's not until September 28th. I have forever to get ready for it. But you know what's so funny though is like I talked about like I am still very excited about the fit model division for my clients. I was excited for me for a little bit and I was thinking about it and I was like, ooh, do I want to do that? And then I started thinking about Danica and I talked about posing and straight stage presence and all that. And I suck at that shit and not in a way that makes me want to get better at it. I just don't like it. And so I decided like to have such a visceral reaction to a 33-mile race with 7,000 feet of climb, and I get to circumnavigate an entire mountain, that I was like, yes, take my money. And so, I mean, that explains it, right? Like,
No,
so
you don't have to pay people to just fucking go out and run obnoxious distances, right? You could do it and just have the wear and tear on your body,
it's true. It's true.
not
But
unwind.
like not as fun, right? I want my medal. They gave me an option when I registered to first I chose to plant a tree instead of getting a race t-shirt. But I do want my medal. Like 100% give me a medal. I didn't get one in my last one and I'm grumpy about that because that was my first ultra and I don't have a medal for it.
So it's probably a good thing, is what you're telling me, that I wasn't on the last podcast, because I would have been like, okay, you should know yourself enough by this point to know exactly what you're actually going to do and what you're not going to do.
Steven would have been like, I've already pulled up the race registration on your browser and you should accept it, Christina.
Yeah, just like, we know what you're going to do.
I
It's
just
who you are.
I like it. And so I told Danica though, because her and I were talking about this yesterday, that my goal is to like be the most muscular at the start line. So I still want to hold on to what I talked about in the New Year's resolution one, that I am going to give more respect to my lifting this year because I did kind of get down to like a once or twice a week kind of thing, which is fine, but I feel like a little weak little baby, so I don't want to feel that way anymore. But that just means that when I do get bored of this fat loss phase, that I'm gonna eat so much food and it's gonna be fun. So that's where we're at.
You mean that thing we tell people not to do all the time?
Wait, what do you mean?
Don't go overboard right after you get off
Oh
of a
no, it's not
diet.
overboard. If I go back to 12 hours of cardio, I have to eat that much. That's the fun part about ultra training is you're encouraged to bring snacks with you for your workout. And so I'm not quite there. I had a long run yesterday for the Colfax in May, and that was 9 miles, which was really fun while I was doing it. And then afterwards, I was like, my knees were definitely like, the fuck? Why are we doing this again? So,
All right, I just had to get that detail out. A
yeah,
little
no,
content.
don't make bad decisions after your fat loss phase. That's not what
Don't
I'm
make
talking
bad
about.
decisions.
No, don't do that.
That's my life. That's what I do. I make bad decisions.
And we're
Come on.
here to say, do as we say, not as we do sometimes. And I like to put that disclaimer out, at least if it's on my stories. Okay.
All right,
Well, I'm happy you
Danica,
chose your
go.
adventure.
Right.
Have you had any like crazy shit happen yet this year, Danica? Has there been anything weird? We're like a day in, but it's not too early to
Anything?
have some weird stuff go down.
Well, we definitely we went out. We went out on New Year's Eve and I had such a good time. I think that I drank too many. You know, when you're like, man, that was probably the point. I should have made an adult decision, like a responsible decision. And I didn't. But that's okay because my husband and I are very probably strange and we like cracked open an LMNT drink and we were like, all right, let's chug this down because we are smart and we can be responsible too, even if the room might be spinning. And it was so much fun. And then the next day was New Year's Day. And I was like, how are you, Matt, how are you doing? He was like, I'm alive. And I was like, okay. So we're bringing in the new year, but we have to be able to move. It was just needless to say, last night I slept 9.5 hours and
You guys had a hotel room though, right?
yeah, but we had to get my mom stayed with the kids and so we had to wake up fairly early to grab the kiddos and but so much fun and it reminded me though I love music. I love dancing. I love having a good time. Like I was made to probably this is going to come off really bad, but I was made to be on a stage dancing. However you want to interpret that, you may. But
Tap dancing is her favorite. Tippity tippity
dancing.
tip. Jazz hands.
But I, I was definitely made to do that, but I loved it. I had so much fun. Nothing crazy has happened aside from me being reminded that, wow, like I can't, I used to do that all the time in college. And like that's definitely like a one time every 5 to 6 months type of thing for my body now. So
You
that's
haven't
all.
been working out your liver as much. It's just weaker right now.
I know it definitely was. But I will say my recovery was wonderful because I did all the right things. Like I moved my body, I got fresh air, I hydrated a lot, I fueled my body, I rested, I took a nap. Who takes naps anymore? I apparently do every now and then. And it was a good time. And nothing wild has happened other than my kids behaving really well. And maybe that's like a great start to the new year.
There you go. There you go.
Ooh, or maybe they're just getting the good behavior out of the way early.
Do they go
So
I
the
back
feel
rest
to
like
of the
the
year
next?
could
I
be
feel they're
terrible.
bored with me. Like to be honest, I think that they are just bored with me at this point, and they're like, we've already pushed all of her buttons. There's no many more. Like I can't find another button to push. So like they're doing karaoke upstairs right now with the dogs, and they're having a great time.
There you go.
Great
That's all
year.
about.
Great year so far. How about you, Steven? Anything crazy?
Uh, we went up to my in-laws. That was awesome. Then like day two, Jillian started getting sick. Day three, she was dying. Like, so by the way, the flu is like rough this year.
Yeah.
Like fever, cold sweats, hot, cold, nausea, all that kind of stuff. So then, she kind of chills out and she's like normal sick for a few days. Then everybody else starts getting sick. And so I think I was the first one, and I started getting the cold sweats and the chills and the fever at night. And so I can't throw up. Like I physically cannot throw up. And this was made evident to me because I was up in the bathroom dry heaving for like, I don't know, like 15, 20 minutes with just like nothing happening. So I'm like, cool, my surgery's holding up. That's great. But it wasn't my favorite. I don't think I would have been like, man, I miss being able to hurl. Like back to my drinking days, you know? You'd be like, oh, I'm gonna feel better now. Yay. Um, but yeah, so we just got back, normal stuff. We had a little snafu with the dog sitter, so we had to find somebody else to come in and watch the dogs, like on night one, day two of the trip.
Well, it's always a good time while you're away.
Oh, dude, I was so mad. They were left in the crates for 12 hours straight, and they didn't like feed them dinner. So we had to have my sister-in-law come over feed them, take them out, hang out with them for a bit. And she had to wake up at 4:30 the next morning for her flight up to New York to meet us
Right.
there with the family, which she missed. Um, so yeah, so then my one of my other friends came by and stayed at the house the rest of the time because we always get house sitters. Um, but yeah, I mean, other than that, I guess it's all right so far. I'm just finally finishing up, getting over the cold. My finger can almost bend all the way again, you know?
Oh, because it was busted.
Yeah, I messed it up
Not
pretty good.
related to the cold. He busted
No,
his finger with his dog.
yeah, different thing. So I'm like looking forward to being able to like get back into the gym. And then I got a little ski trip next week. So super excited for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Next
Yeah.
week is my birthday.
Oh, well, happy early birthday.
I know. I'm going to tell everybody just so they can calm me the F down because I'm turning 40 and I already told Christina and it just feels different.
No, but then I went and told Vic and I was like excited. And he was like, what? I was like, Danica's turning 40 next week. He was like, what? Like we had like a whole thing. So, I mean, we're like celebrating 40 over here.
Imagine all the stuff that like you can now when you hit your 40s, you can be like, I'm too old for this shit. I'm 40. Like that
It
you're not allowed to
feels,
technically
yeah,
do in your 30s or you socially is not acceptable.
this is true. This is true. But I don't feel, I don't know. Why is it that like 40s feels weird? Or maybe it's
Because
because
if you look back at all the movies that we watched when we were kids and they showed somebody in their 40s, it was the literal fucking Golden Girls. And they were like, here they are. Like, you know, you look at like the parents in movies when we were kids and they were so old. And now we're like their age and we're
it feels different.
doing it
And,
well.
and there were differences too, because you got to think smoking was socially acceptable back then. People for a long time didn't even necessarily recognize that it was bad for you, so that aged people more so. You talk about the jobs that people did were probably tougher on them, so that could
Mhm.
have aged them, added different stress, those kind of things. So I think it's just a little bit different. Plus, I think as you're going up in age, it's a new milestone. So it always feels like it's bigger than it is. Like I'm sure when we hit 50, we're gonna be back like 40 is nothing. 40 was great.
Right.
That's how I feel about 30. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be 30. Crap. And I'm like, no way, my 30s have been the best years of my life so far. This is awesome.
Yeah.
So I think it's being open to like good things can still happen. I've only got less broke over time, you know.
Right. It's not a nice
Definitely, definitely not rich, but I'm not as broke as I was in my 20s, thank
it's
God.
a little bit easier, right?
It does feel, yeah, I do feel, I don't, I feel good that I'm turning 40 and I'm in the place that I'm at in life and like mind, body, all the things, but it just feels like I still just can't believe it, maybe. It just feels like, but really, did we miscalculate this? Like, was I really born in 1985, like on January 7th? Are you sure? Because I don't feel like it's going to be my 40th. But then again, like when Matt and I had our 10-year anniversary, I was like, are you sure? Like this is really happening. So, yeah.
Yeah. Let's not get into the philosophy. That's too much. It's
I know
too much.
someone told me and I was like, please, I sometimes I can't go too deep either. So just so you guys know, but someone said to me, like, time is just a human something. Like, don't let it restrain you. Time is just a human.
Time is the fourth dimension, actually.
Yeah, I
I
was
think.
like, I'm
So,
sorry, I can't, and I'm not even gonna like it or like do any reply because I don't have that bandwidth. I got a pretty big one, but not that one.
No,
yeah,
that's just
I started looking
me.
into the fourth dimension stuff at 2:30 a.m. last night because I couldn't sleep.
Fresh in his
So,
brain.
yeah, I started
Yeah.
looking into different dimensions and whatnot. So, yeah, time is the fourth dimension. So, realistically, if that is true, then we did not invent that. Like it was a natural law that exists in the universe that explains occurrences that we discovered. So take that.
Okay.
How many people do you think are still listening to our podcast right
I
now?
know, right?
You really want to mess with time in your head. Watch a whole bunch of X-Men movies and then try to keep the timeline straight and understand how they manipulate everything. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so Steven, you were supposed to intro us into our fucking topic today, and we took all the side roads. So why don't you start with
Yeah.
that?
I didn't have my coffee. It
Oh,
keeps my meds working later in the
level you
day.
down. Yeah.
Well, we talked about 2025, and then that was good. There was a recap of like how our 2 days have been so far, just two, right? Which is good.
I thought yours was great because like we wanted to talk about kind of misconceptions, right? Like differences between health and fitness and maybe what is marketed or what is the general assumption on some things versus what's the reality of that. And so like maybe Danica getting ready to turn 40, you know, and have that celebration is a great thing because obviously you're going to have some preconceived notions about what that's going to entail for you, what life is going to look like, what things are going to happen, um, what you're going to have to do in that time in life. And then the reality may be very different, right? Oh, we're
Right.
going to have to talk to our parents to figure stuff out. Doesn't that
I
suck?
know. I
Ugh.
know. But I think it is important to always, maybe something people can take from that too, is to always, when you are setting goals or a lot of our New Year's resolutions are, I think that most of them, this would be a great thing to kind of look up. If most New Year's resolutions are driven by like health, like is that the theme of New Year's resolutions for the most part? What percentage? Or are there other ones? And then when we set those goals, are you really thinking about what does that actually mean? Like, what does that mean for you? And what does that actually look like? Like, be able to kind of play it out a little bit deeper for yourself.
Yeah, so according to a quick Google search, 62% of New Year's resolutions include exercise, 61% include diet, um, 57% plan to increase their physical daily activity. Only 36% plan to do their mental health. So take that, Danica, backseat today.
Wow. Yeah. And then how I wonder if more people, if that was switch, no, if it would like switch, if more people focus on their mental health and like their mindset, their mental health, their emotional well-being, if then in turn there wouldn't be so many health and fitness New Year's resolutions.
Right. And I mean the issue there, right, is that like flipping that takes away a lot of the not instant, but like faster gratification, right? I feel
Mm.
like because therapy, you can end a session and you either feel great afterwards. You're like, why did I do this to myself? Like, you know, like I didn't even think about that. And then like now you have all this other shit to go through.
A lot more
And
stuff
so
coming up.
it's not necessarily something where you can be like, oh, look how many calories I burned, or I walked this many steps and stuff like that. So it's harder to have that feedback. And I mean, that goes back to the basis of why we should have more focus on these mental health things or look at the way that the measures of success and like things like that. And I mean, that pulls it back to consistency, right? Where like I feel like more people could be more successful with the mental health or like focusing on that kind of resolution with things if we looked at the consistency aspect of it. Like, oh, I have done like meditations this many days in a row, or I did go to my therapy appointment like once a week for this many weeks or something, and get more gratification out of that as opposed to the scale's down a pound or two, like so we'd have to reshape that whole narrative, I think.
So I think this is where like the misconception comes in, right? So there's this misconception that I think most people have that the health and fitness goals are easier than they are, right?
Right.
Because I think mental health, like pretty much everybody agrees that that's tough stuff. It's difficult. It's not simple. It's different for everybody. And like you said, there's no proverbial carrot on the stick there. It's like, oh, okay, I'll eventually feel better, or I'll eventually slow my response in these situations to where I can be more proactive about responding healthily, stuff like that. But like for exercise, for diet stuff, like, oh, I can see the scale go down a pound or 5 pounds or 10 pounds. Carrot on the stick. Or, oh, I can have an excuse to buy some new gym clothes that are cute, right? A little bit of dopamine hit from the shopping, and now I have something to post and yada yada other stuff. And so I think what ends up happening in this misconception is that we make it into a very simple thing. But for most people, it's really not like it's simple, but it's really not. Like the end goal idea is simple, but it's okay. So say being rich is simple. Yeah, you just make a lot of money, right? Make all the money. Okay, now how are you going to do that? You have a life, you have a starting point, you have a ton of other considerations, and a bunch of things outside of your control. Cool. But I think people don't really buy into that with diet and exercise. Like, oh, I might have to give up something that makes me feel good. Like, I really like this treat every day that I have, but it puts me over my calories. It doesn't fit my macros. I'm always hungry afterwards. Um, and it doesn't help me in the goal. So now, not only do I have to work to do something to, change my diet habits and eat differently, I have to give up something that I like also to do it possibly. And I think this is one of those very common misconceptions that people have where it's like, oh yeah, this will be easy. I'm just going to go to the gym 3 days a week. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, you have 4 kids, you're a single parent, you have XYZ going on, and you have all these other considerations. How are you going to get to the gym 4 days a week realistically? But people don't get to that point. Oh, that's going to be hard. Maybe I need to find some at-home workouts that I can do a couple days a week. And they don't recognize the challenge that's actually going to be presented in them for that. Not even just the challenge of doing it, doing the exercise, doing the workout, but the challenge of like changing their habits. This is what I wanted to get back into earlier when I was like, you got to know who you are, Christina. You can't make goals that go against who you are as a person,
Right.
you know? Um, you have to know who you are and work within that and be realistic with it. And I think that the New Year's resolutions and such, it has this tendency for people to want to change who they are, things they don't like about themselves that are inherent to their personalities and inherent to their lives. And it's not to say that you can't change it, but changing who you are is not easy, simple, or quick.
So this makes me think of I shared like I forget who it was, but somebody had posted something where it was like you don't need 75 hard, you need 365
Oh,
consistent, right? I had like 10 people respond to it where they were like, but I'm starting 75 hard on January 1st. And for a pretty high percentage of the people who sent me that, I was like, good luck. Like I'm like, is it, listen, 75 hard is something that if somebody truly does it and gets to the end of it, I think can be really awesome with stuff. It's also damn near impossible. And it's not entirely impossible, right? But like in the situation that like Steven's talking about, or as like somebody whose job is fucking fitness and my whole life revolves around this shit, it and like I majority of the 75 hard things I don't even have to think about. I can be accidentally 75 hard majority of the days. But like I when doing it as an effort have never made it past day 8. And that's because with some of the stuff, it like life happens or like something comes up. It was almost never the workouts that got me. It was almost always either remembering to read or like water or something like something where I didn't get like quite all of the way. And I'll say I'm somebody that if I'm going to do 75 hard, like I don't fudge the rules at all. Like I'm not going to say I did it or a certain number of days unless I absolutely did it. And I know there's a lot of people who will say they did it, but they'll be like, but I had a couple of days. It's like keto, right? Where they're like, oh, I'm keto during the work week, but on the weekends I have pizza and a beer. And I'm like, well, then you're not keto. And so like when it comes to stuff like that, I think the appeal, and like I asked people in my stories, why are you doing this? What are you hoping out of it and stuff? And they were like, well, for if I can just get it together for those 75 days, I think it'll be easier afterwards to maintain the habits and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, what if I said, are you willing to not have a drink for all of 2025? Like, are you, if you're prepared to say you're going to be sober for those 75 days, are you prepared to be sober for 2025? It's like, oh, no, 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 no. It's going to end just in time for summer. And, you know, we're going on this cruise like 2 weeks afterwards and like that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, so we're committing to the sprint where we're saying for 75 days, we're going to be very diligent and we're going to be very dialed in. But we already are telling ourselves when that is done, fuck it. And like, why not instead? Why is it so much scarier to say, okay, well, for the entire year, I'm going to drink 100 ounces of water every day. I'm going to move my body for 30 minutes every day. And, even if it's a walk, like, something like that. But for some, it's like, oh no, I can do 2 45 minute people. I can't get to go for an outdoor walk for 10 minutes are suddenly going to commit to 45 minutes of exercise every single day outside starting January 1st. And it's like, but what happens after that? And like, that's my issue with those things is that it becomes this, we're giving it's wanting the silver bullet and I only have to do it for 75 days. And by the time spring break rolls around, my whole life will have reset and it'll be better. And I won't have to do that anymore. Where like I would challenge people to try and, okay, could you do 3 75 hards back to back this year? Like, would you be willing to think about that as an idea? And I doubt very many people want to do that because it's so much. Like, it's so much.
Yeah, there's a few things I wanted to say. Um, you said, Stephen, like like know who you are first before, and this kind of goes with the 75 hard too, or creating your goal, like know who you are first. But you could also check in with yourself and know who you are first, and then figure out why haven't I got my shit together yet? Like you said, Christina, oh, but I'm gonna get my shit, like I'm gonna get it together now. Like now this will help me to get it together. Well, why haven't you gotten it together yet? Like that should be something that you look at and then look at your goals. Like if these are my goals, why haven't I achieved these goals yet? And then what do I need to shift in order to achieve these goals? And is that part of creating a different me, right? Like in some capacity or another. It doesn't mean that you need to do like a 180, but it probably means that you need to do some self-reflection and say, like, am I willing to change who I am or change parts of me in order to achieve these goals? Maybe it's just looking a little bit deeper at the goals. I think that it's easy to throw out goals sometimes when we don't consider everything that it entails. Like that's super easy to be like, I'm going to do 75 hard because it's exciting. Like it's exciting to put that out there. It is not as exciting to be like, and that means in order to do this, I need to shift XYZ. I need to make some changes here. I need to adapt to feeling uncomfortable sometimes. Like I need to be okay with that. That probably is the part where people get most tripped up when they go hard at these goals and then they're 2 weeks in and then they say, oh shit, I didn't realize that like I didn't really set myself up for success here. Like I kind of just went all in thinking that of course everybody can do hard things, but you should probably consider what tools do you need to be able to do those hard things?
So I think part of this for me also is like mental bandwidth, right? So you're like, oh, you should read 10 minutes a day. Like, get bent. I'm not gonna read 10 minutes a day. I hate reading. Like,
Yeah.
I force myself to read papers and to read stuff that is applicable to our field and things that I find interesting when my hyper focus like takes me away. But I don't like reading. So as soon as I see something where like, oh, maybe I can do these things, but oh, I'm supposed to read for 10 minutes a day too, like I'm not gonna do that. Like I know I'm not gonna do that. So even if I had the goal to want to read more, me telling myself that I'm gonna read every day all of a sudden, like for me, never gonna happen. No, maybe I need to start with like reading on a weekend day or when it makes sense for me. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of mess up. But it's not even just that. If you look at something, we'll say 75 hard, for example, people do it with contest preps too. Let's be real. So there's another really good example right there that's just dangling its little fruits right in front of our faces. That sounds terrible.
But I feel like at least with that prep, like what's fun about that is you kind of hopefully, right? Somebody gets pulled into that world of like now they have big goals if they're going to get feedback at their show and their feedback says you need more shoulders, you need more glutes, and so now they're working really hard in the gym to try and attain that. And so it hopefully can spiral into a long-term thing.
I mean, isn't that the same idea between 75 hard? Like, if you can do all these hard things and you can do this for 75 days, you're going to change who you are and you're going to be a more successful adult and human because you're now doing these things that more successful people do and yada, 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 whatever. I think there's still some of that marketing
Yeah.
and mindset influenced in there. But my point to go into this is like you have to look at what's real. And we said this a million times. You, I don't know anybody that can change everything about themselves overnight. Hey, I normally get 2,000 steps a day. I have a sedentary job. I hate exercise. Sweating makes me uncomfortable or gives me a rash. Or, you know, I have astigmatism and I need all these special considerations to read or to do X, Y, Z. Or I don't know how to track my food. So, you know, I haven't learned how to read a nutrition label yet or to do X, Y, Z. Like, that's so much stuff to try and tackle all at once on top of all the stuff that life already entails. Like that's what's crazy to me. Like they're biting off more than they can chew when realistically it goes back to what you said. If we were to take a small thing, work on that within what we have available, master that. Now, once it's mastered and it becomes kind of a habit or part of our identity, whatever it might be, now we have that bandwidth open again to move on to the next thing. Now we can start to do the next thing. You try and do it all, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. What's up, ADHD? Hi, it's me, Steve. Like, welcome to my life. Like that's what we do. And then, you know, by February, March, everybody's burnt out and saying fuck it and surprised about it. I'm like, guys, gals, let's be more realistic with ourselves. But it wasn't that wasn't a realistic bite. We knew we were going to choke and have to spit some back out onto the plate in front of everybody and be gross.
It just dawned on me this is going to come out the day before quitting day.
Oh,
Right.
It's going to come out on the Thursday before. So quitting day is the second Friday of the year. And so this worked out well with hopefully people are still going like with their stuff and have avoided what Steven just said with like I mean, really, I'm sure it's so frustrating for people to hear, but we say this coming from a place of having worked with so many clients and this being the thing that we make a living off of, right? And it really comes down to the people who find success are the ones who do it in a much more, we talked about this in the last one, like manageable choices kind of way. And I mean, I get it. I love biting off more than I can chew, right? Like I've done that way too often. And I mean, to do something like this where like with my race, for example, it's not until September 28th, like that's almost 10 months from now that I get to work on this one thing. And this one thing will take over my entire life as of like, I mean, I had a feeling I was going to do something like this on Christmas. And so I had already kind of started it up. And so I was already a little bit into it. But you know, so then I love that. And that's been something I've had to teach myself to do is to pick something that is going to take forever and that is only going to work out well if I am able to give my life over to it in a certain way. Obviously, I mean, I had to sit down with Vic and be like, it's your birthday weekend. Can I go drag you to Colorado and like park you in a cabin while I go run all day long? And I'm, you know, there's going to be long runs and like all of that entailed and everything. But choosing something, this goes back to like if you're making these choices for your exercise and stuff. And Stephen talked about like if you have different barriers to the choice of your exercise and everything, you have to choose something you're going to want to stick with to some degree, even if it's something that you just hate the least versus what you love the most. If it gets you going, it needs to be something that you're going to be able to talk yourself into. Otherwise, you're not going to get to September 28th when you started on January 1st.
yeah, it's like it's not tax fraud. It's not what you really love, but you know, you're getting $5 in cash.
Right. There you go.
Well, it has to also go back to a, a good reason for them too, right? Like, why do I want to make these changes at all? Why do I want to do 75 hard? Why do I want to set these goals for myself? I asked a client this morning who she has struggled for a long time to be focused. Like she also had lap band surgery and complications, and she finally got that out, which was amazing for her. I feel like that was a big thing she needed out, but she hasn't been consistent at going. She's always set the goal, but hasn't been consistent at going after the goal. Like it's just been, this is a nice little thing to say. Like I can verbally just tell you my goal, but then actually doing it hasn't really, there's no follow through with it. So today I was like, those are great. Those are great goals that you have. Why? Like,
Yeah.
what is the purpose of these? Like, what are these actually going to bring you in life? And we talked about just having like a deeper reason of why you might make the changes or why you might incorporate walking daily or why are you going to do this? And it's wonderful to say, well, I have 3 month goal, like I have a February target date or whatever it may be. It's also beautiful to say, and I want to be able to continue to run around with my grandchildren. Like, and as whatever, poo poo on the bigger picture, but I think most people should probably look at the bigger picture and then know that like the choices that they make in order to one, set the goal, set your goal, but then the choices that you make should also lead to bigger changes and bigger progress in life. Like, don't you want that? Like, sometimes I'm like, to, don't you want to have a really good, healthy, vibrant life? Like, is this not something that people would desire? And if you don't, like, we can have a conversation about that, but you should probably set goals that help you to live a really awesome life and whatever that means for people. And maybe 75 hard will help you to get there, but you're going to have to make sure each variable that you incorporate to the 75 hard also helps you to like progress in life, like the bigger picture of life.
So now
Now I'm going too deep.
you're re-hitting on something that I kind of talked about 75 hard, but I think is another good misconception to discuss, and I think is out there, is that I think there's this misconception that people who are in the fitness industry, bodybuilders, whatever, that they're confident or that they're happy or they're successful or shit, even that they're good people. 'Cause I think shit, if any of you guys listen to me, you know that ain't true.
Again,
But
not just
He
but
thinks he's so tough.
I'm not. I'm
Well,
very weak.
totally
Please don't
be
say mean
fair.
things to me on the internet.
You don't. None of us like that. Thank you.
Um, but I think there's this misconception, and I think this is where a lot of people make the, and we hear it all the time. Oh, I'll feel better if I can just lose the 20 pounds. Like, okay, maybe you will, but is the 20 pounds the real issue? That's like that, or is it that, we're in a job that just we hate and treats us terribly, and or do we need to work on some other things? But I feel like I'll do better in XYZ if I'm, a little bit more fit. Okay. Well, I mean, maybe if it's a physical activity and you're more physically fit, then yes, that makes sense. But what if it's something that has nothing to do with it? Like, do those correlations actually make sense? And I think this idea that everybody in the fitness industry, whatever that might entail, and let's say more so bodybuilders, physique athletes kind of stuff, are successful, happy, or even confident, I think is a misconception. I think most people in the industry are actually very um, non-confident in their physiques. Because I think that's what kind of gets you going into it, and it kind of builds on itself. There's always something you got to change. And there are people that I've met that are quite happy with their physiques that are, athletes and in it, and they do exist. But I think it's less common than what people on the outside would think.
The first thing I think of with that is how there started to be backlash about the new fit model division and stuff and how people are so grumpy over it. And not a lot of people. I've only seen like a handful of people talk poorly about it, but they're going to the whole thing of like it waters something down or it somehow takes away from them and stuff. And I just want to respond with like, your low self-esteem is showing. Like, why does this thing that is that was introduced to lift others up and to give more opportunity and stuff like that, why is it bugging you so much? Like, how is this scaring you and like taking your stuff away? And like, when now it's a completely different thing, right? And so I think like, that's like a small example of how in this industry like people can get so weird about that kind of stuff when it comes to it. And I mean that goes back to where there's so much more that we need to be doing than like saying like, oh, my gym time is my mental health time and like things like that, because I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with where they'll be like, maybe we started at 180 and they're like, oh, my goal is to get to 150. And then over time we get there and they're like, I thought that I was going to really like this, but I'm thinking now I'm probably going to like the way I look better at 140. And then we had gotten there, and she's like, I'm thinking that maybe 2025, my goal is to get to like 120 pounds. And that's when wait, hold on. You're 5'9", and like us getting there, like this isn't something where we can just keep kicking that can. And I mean, I'll laugh about it sometimes with like bodybuilding clients after, if I have someone who does like their first show. And then, maybe during their prep or something, they'll start to notice parts of their body that before we had ever done a first prep, they thought were so cool. And then now they're like, oh, I think my quads are a little bit too small. And I'll like laugh with them, like, welcome to bodybuilding, where there's always something you're going to want to build up more. This is just your life now. And I mean, you have to kind of look at it in a funny way, right? If you're choosing this as your sport, and reshaping yourself and trying to have a critical eye while you look at yourself in the mirror and pick what needs to be changed, you do have to go into that with an ability to zoom out and laugh a little, I guess, or like keep in mind, go back and look at stuff and like reshape that you're going to look at these things. Because I mean, I think it can be a really beautiful thing for people, but like that's just like how we wouldn't tell somebody who had never been in the gym before and who had never tracked macros, we wouldn't be like, oh, well, you know what you should do to get you really excited about this lifestyle? I'm going to sign you up for your first bodybuilding competition and you're going to get on stage in 4 months. Like, that would be bonkers and probably not the best thing.
It's like, hey, cool, let's go do physics, and you haven't even finished, normal algebra yet.
Right, right. Like, we're going to strap you into the rocket and you'll just learn it on the way. Like, not the way we want to do things.
It's
And
not a restaurant job.
right, right. Just get it to table 42. You'll figure it out.
With every fitness goal that people make, or fitness, health, aesthetic goal, they also have to pair it with like a mental, emotional goal. Because that way you have to think like, say somebody says to me, I'd like to drop 15 pounds. And while doing so, I'd really like to make sure that my internal dialogue is positive and I'm not always feeling self-defeated. Like I want to be able to give myself grace along the way. Then you kind of set a little bit more maybe internal boundaries for yourself and healthy boundaries so that you don't go like I mean, it can be a slippery slope, right? There's misperceptions with fitness goals of stepping on stage, of like, what does it actually entail? So this way you kind of have parameters to also line yourself up with. Like you can still go after the aesthetic goals, but alongside, you also have to make sure that you're checking in with the mental and emotional goals too.
Yeah. So I restarted my Whoop after like a year or two off from it. And like my favorite part about it, one of you had an Aura ring, right? Do you guys have that anymore?
I had the Aura ring. I now have the Samsung Galaxy ring because I don't have to pay for a subscription with it.
Oh,
Interesting.
And it automatically updates. I don't have to go into the app and like make it update.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah.
what I've
Anyways,
always loved about these things, where I found the most value out of them, and if you haven't listened to the podcasts with Adam, where he talks about fitness wearables and like the legitimate research he's done with them, it's very cool. But I did some interviews with him while he was doing that research. And like one of the things for me with my Whoop, if it tells me I should not work out that day, it's very unlikely I'm going to listen. And so like I don't use it for like those purposes. Like I don't let it give me rules. But what I have always liked about it was the journal feature. And so you can go in and set up your journal with, there's like a million things that you can add into it. But I have mine set to like mostly the things that I know are either detractors from a good day or things I know add to my life, whether or not they're easy for me to do every single day. So it's like the I probably shouldn't, and then the I really shoulds are throughout my little list, and I go through that. And they added some really cool like mental health ones. And it's literally like, did you feel depressed or down today? Did you feel in control of your life? Did you express gratitude? And then it will give me a slider for like if you click yes, I felt in control of my life, it gives you a slider of like how in control did you feel and stuff. And what's funny is I feel like once I added that to my thing, it has been much easier for me to click like, yes, I do feel in control. I did express gratitude today. And like think about those things throughout my day to try and make it so I can click the good ones the next day, right? And I'm sure that like there's still going to be days where I'm like, yes, I was pissed off and crying all day long because it fucking happens. But I've found that even having that check-in, like Danica's saying, like if you're going to have these goals, then also have this other side of stuff. It makes it stay at the top of your head and encourages you to do the things that support that, right? And so, and then in turn, it's this tiny little thing, but now my days I have felt more control over. I have made, I I made myself go for a walk when it was cold and dark outside. Vic was like, I was like, do you want to go for a walk now? Like after dinner? And he was like, excuse me? And I was like, I know. I have to put my stupid snow jacket on and my Whoop. Like I can't log anything lower than 30 minutes for time outside. I can't put 0.25 of an hour. I have to put at least 0.5. And I'm not going to lie to my Whoop. So then I have to go out and do the whole fucking half hour. And so things like that. I mean, I'm the kind of person they work really well for, but like I would say in line with what Danica's saying, like put those, they're in our check-in, right? Or like I wish we could add something like that, even more so for each day where people can say, how they worked alongside with those. And I think with 75 hard, that's why they have like the reading and stuff in there. But I don't think you have to read self-help books to get the benefit of it.
Right. I do feel that your narrative will probably switch too, because sometimes I talked about this, maybe it was like a post that I did, but it was about the holidays and like instead of leading with a restriction, lead with intention. And sometimes when we make fitness and health goals, the narrative does become like an all or nothing or a black and white or I'm failing. Like I failed. See, you can't even do this right. Like you were supposed to hit this and you didn't even do it. And how could you not reach your numbers? Or like, good job, you're down a pound and you could have been miserable that whole entire day. Like if you didn't check in with like, you could have been like a complete asshole to your loved ones, but you went down a pound. Like, so I feel like being able to maybe tie in mental or emotional well-being or like internal dialogue goals or what is the narrative around while you are striving to achieve these goals, how is the narrative with that too? Like, are you applauding yourself only when you hit certain numbers? And are you like hating yourself when you're not? Because that can't be long term. That can't be good. Because then what? Then you get to the then what? Like, so this is just forever land that you're going to stay in. That sounds miserable to me. Like, even if you did achieve your goal, those are probably the people that one would probably not, they would give up at a certain point, right? Because it's too much for our psyche and we feel defeated before even like gaining consistency. And then number two, it's probably the people that when they hit their goal, they don't feel fulfilled yet. They're like, okay, now what? Like, what do I'm going to push harder or I have to do more or this isn't even good enough. I didn't even do good enough. Like this isn't great at all. Like you didn't even go the distance. And that's not good. Like that can't be a good recipe at all.
That's like me at every goal.
Yeah. I was like, you guys feel fulfilled when you get things done?
Like
What?
2 weeks before it's done, I'm like, it's already fucked. I have to do something harder.
So, and I had a call, and this is one I want to bring up. It kind of ties into this other one, but like, and so the person I was on the phone with, they said, yeah, my first coach told me that, bodybuilding ruins relationships. And I was like, it doesn't have to.
Right.
But so it's like there's this misconception, I think, on both ends here of maybe people who are in prep that like it has to take over and be more important than everything else. And it's going to ruin some other relationships because people are going to get upset about it or not understand, or we're just going to be shitty people to them because we're dieting and feel bad. And I think on the other end of the spectrum, it comes with people who don't understand that at all. And they're not ready for this idea that you have to keep the main thing the main thing. Like my last prep, I said straight up, if it impacts my work, because I'm a coach first, not a competitor, I'm fucking done prepping. And if it impacts my relationship with my now wife, I'm fucking done prepping. Because those things are both more important. Like that there is no conversation about it. If I had kids, it would be the same with that. If I was being shitty with my kids, done. Prep's over. I'm done dieting. That's out. It's not more important than those things. And so I think that there's also this misconception that it's going to be either crazy hard or crazy easy. And it's just going to be simple, easy does it. And I think both of those exist simultaneously depending on the person and the crowd that they're in. And those I think are both incorrect. I would say through a lot of my clients, with myself, um, I have had so many people get to very extreme places and be like, "Wait, but coach, this wasn't hard. This was easy. Like I feel like I did something wrong." Like, no, that means we did everything right. It was manageable. We made it fit your lifestyle where you're at, and we got really good results doing it. Like that means we did it right. And I think very few people are in that middle ground of it's going to take some work. I need to have priorities set so that my relationships stay good, um, and I'm not letting them get ruined. But it also shouldn't be the hardest thing in the world.
Right. Yeah, it is sad when I like reflect back on people who have or I have watched done preps and then like during that time, like even achieving really amazing things in their, I guess, career, they weren't happy. Like they were, or they'd be like, I'm so depressed. I'm like, and people are applauding you. Like people are like, you are unfortunately inspiring people and this is what they're inspired by. That's really
So,
sad.
do you remember what was it 2 years ago? I think when Chris Bumstead was crying on stage after he won the Olympia, and he's like, "This was the hardest prep I've ever done. I wanted to quit over and over and over again, but I made it through and I did it, and now and this and that." I was like, bro, that doesn't make me want to be a bodybuilder. Like that sounds fucking awful. And I'm glad you made it through it. I'm glad you accomplished your goal and all that good stuff. But like, I don't think I like for people I care about, I wouldn't want them to go through something that they consistently wanted to quit at and were having breakdowns about. Like, no, if I cared about something, I'd be like, dude, this seems super unhealthy. I can't encourage you to keep doing this. We need to figure something different out. So either where you can do it in a way that doesn't have such a negative impact on you, or maybe we just don't do it at all.
Yeah.
But that's an Olympia level person, and it's that same idea of yeah, just fucking murder yourself and suffer into it, and then people take that and then that's what they think bodybuilding has to be.
Well, and I mean, that goes to like if you're working at something at that level, right? Like for professional athletes, like they don't always want to play football. They don't always want to be the bodybuilder who's working that hard, you know? But like if that's become your everything, like that's your career, that's been their hobby, it is their persona, it's them, right? Then like at that point, I think it can be kind of refreshing to have somebody where it's their company, it's him personally, like it's everything for them to be like, God, this sucked. And it had like I had to grind to get here and stuff like that. And honestly, I wish that got shared a little bit more when it comes to stuff, because we've all talked to the people who will do consult calls and they're like, oh, and by this time next year I'm going to win my pro card and I'm going to be that person. I'm going to walk around looking like that all the time. And it's like it's not just as simple as like you go to the gym and like stuff like that. But even if it, no matter what your sport is, the thing, if you are somebody who has that big giant goal, I think that you do have to prepare for the fact that that is going to come, and you don't get to just throw in the towel with it and say, well, that week was hard, so I didn't do it. Because there was plenty of times, I'm sure, where was it, there wasn't that the year that they had their baby, because she is new, right? Isn't their baby like a year old or something like that? So like this last year would have been when he prepped through Courtney being pregnant and like all sorts of stuff and everything. And like there, a lot of people aspire to the end goal, but they don't aspire to the amount of grit and work ethic that it's going to take. And because you say that like, oh, I wouldn't want somebody to take on that stuff. This last year, we went through a lot in like towards the end of summer and everything, with things like some stuff being changed and everything. And at the same time, I was working on my ultra, and I like stuff had gotten busier with work. Like my plate got very, very full. And there were so many times that I would reach out to my coach and be like, I think I should quit. I don't think I should do this. I think I should pull out because I don't know if I'm going to make it to the end goal with the amount of time that I've been given. And I don't know if I should do this. And thank God that Carly knew me well enough from the get-go that she was like, that makes perfect sense with everything that's going on. And if you feel like you need to pull out, I will 100% support you. But how are you going to feel on October 5th if you are not at that start line? And I was like, I will be livid that I did not at least try it. And so I think that there's, again, this is one of those things that can be like pretty nuanced, and that so when we're setting goals, decide how much you truly care about the end of it. And is it going to be something where 6 weeks in, when it does get hard and there's a grind, that it's like, well, fuck it, this isn't for me? Or are you picking something where it's like, no, you're right. If I don't give this everything I can, and maybe that means that there's weeks that you have to dial back and you have to reschedule things and it doesn't all get done and you do your best. It doesn't have to be perfect the whole time, but like if you're going to set big giant goals, you should be prepared for the fact that they're probably going to kick you in the face at some point and make you question why you're doing it.
Yeah, so I don't think his goal was to tell people they should just fucking murder themselves.
Right.
By any means. So let me put that out there too. But I think it still puts out that misconception there. Because if you're just getting into something, like I think we all kind of have ideas of grandeur, and we all kind of put some thought and effort into, oh, what if I'm the best of the best that ever was? Like, I'm almost 40. I'm not going to be the best of the best of anything at this point in my life. If I was going to do that, it fucking happened already.
Oh, you're the
But so,
best Stephen Bogrand.
yeah, well, no, I'm not. My cousin's way better than me.
No, there's another.
There's another Stephen Bogrand. So I think he lives in Oregon. And I found out about him because when I got sent to a boot camp as a kid and as a teenager, like, you're our second Stephen Bogrand. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah. And so actually, I have to fucking be very careful about how I fill out financial documents and stuff too, because otherwise I get effed in the A on it, you know? And so,
That's
anyways,
all I didn't know was built for me.
boom. Um, but there shouldn't be this idea, I think, of the second I start looking at getting into something that I romanticize the grind so much against all the other stuff in my life.
Yeah.
Because you have other things, and so maybe you have family and friends and all this other stuff, like, and all those people are important to you. There's if you got nothing in your life that you care about, maybe it's a different story. I don't, I know some people like that, but most people I know have things they care about. That's where I think you have to be aware of this. And you should probably be able to try it out. You should be able to dip the toe. Do I like this? Does this feel like something that's good for me? Does this work with who I am, my values, my lifestyle, where I want to be, yada yada. Cool, great. Then maybe ramp it up. Then go to the next thing, the next thing. But like again, you can't go from point A to point Z. It just doesn't work like that. So even in sport, athletics, all the rest of the stuff, most people get weeded out in middle school, high school, right? You're playing pee-wee, you're in the football games, you get to middle school, you're okay. You get to high school, you don't quite make the team. In college, now you're doing something else. Bodybuilding's a different thing because most people get into it in their 20s. You're already older. So we're talking about getting weeded out in what? Maybe our 30s or 40s, depending on how often we compete, what we do, the rest of the stuff, training approach. Like, I think it's a different story because now we're at an age where we have a better idea of who we are, what we like, our identities. We've matured a reasonable amount. It's not like we're still in our teens when most of those delineations happen for sport, where it's very okay for us to be figuring things out. You know, talk about the midlife crisis, those kind of things. That shit messes people up. So I think there's absolutely should still be some sort of delineation there to try and stay away from that misconception that like we should, and 75 hard, I believe is the same thing. We're we're romanticizing the grind to our, and many times to our own detriment, or ignoring our own detriment in doing so.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also feel like sometimes if people like the grind, or because there is something to be said about like feeling challenged. I know that I very much like to be challenged, or I like to be I like a degree of discomfort because I know that it challenges me. So if you're searching for that, I think that you should also just reflect and say, well, am I doing everything that I can in the parts of my life that I already have too? Like, am I challenging myself as a parent? Am I challenging myself as a spouse? Am I challenging myself as an employee or a business owner or whatever that may be? Could you reflect on that too? And are you searching for something to entice you, like a challenge, because you're feeling stagnant in your own life? And could you possibly just look at this is there a word like stagnancy? That's not a word. Are you feeling just stuck in a rut in your own life and need to spice things up like with what you already have? Is stagnancy a word?
No.
I don't think so.
There's gonna be
Is there a word like that? Like when you not
a
stall.
state of being stagnant. Let's find out.
Oh my
Stagnation.
God. Yeah.
Stagnation. Are you in stagnation?
Why couldn't we come up with that?
Motionless,
Words
standing,
are hard.
stationary.
Yeah, yeah. Like, could you also
Good one.
maybe that desire to
Stale.
like feel that, because that's a lot of people want that. I would hope that a lot of people want that, right? Unless you're pretty cool and settled in your life and you don't need that invigorating feeling. But could you try to challenge yourself in the areas of like personal growth that you maybe that's the hard work you need to do. Like maybe that's the shit you need to go into a little bit more. And then you can have a side thing too. Like then you can maybe do a side thing as well if you really want to.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Like we should be challenged. But just like anything else, if we talk about homeostasis, it's a range. There's a range of what's healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anywhere in here, this can be really good for us. And when we get outside this end of the range, it's bad. And when we get outside this end of the range, it's bad. And that's where I think most people get lost, is that they're looking at one end of the spectrum or the other. They're not looking at the actual range where true growth and progress actually happens, or change actually happens, that gets them closer to what they want. Um, and so what ends up happening, oh, either I don't do enough and then I burn out and I quit because it's supposed to be easy and I did the easy stuff and it didn't work, or I did all the crazy hardest stuff and guess what? I burn out and I quit because that shit can only last so long.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I struggle with with coaching, with wanting to try and help people set the realistic side of things, and then also wanting to be like, but why not make it harder? Like, and I mean, I think a part of that's me, like, because I like to think that way, but then also because I think this is, I mean, the funny thing about 75 hard and January in general is that those two go hand in hand ever since it got popular. And then people want to do the big reset or whatever. But I do think that, I mean, to a certain extent, we have just a lot of people in general who don't push that limit for fear of what's on the other side. Even when like I'll talk to clients where they've gained and lost the same 50 pounds because for whatever reason, they lose the 50 pounds, they get to where they want to be. And then, like, I had a call with one person where she was like, I don't even know how to put more of a finger on it than once I get to my goal, I completely self sabotage and get back to where I was. And I like, why? And like, I was like, I'm very curious about, like, I would love to understand that more. And we worked together for like 6 weeks and I never found out. And it's like one of those things where I think we do just have kind of a situation though where I mean, and maybe it's the too much information. We have access to too much. And so it is easier to be like, okay, well, here's all the reasons why that will be too hard and why I shouldn't do it. And yes, I'm in it, but you know what? I don't know if I can do this for another 4 months. And so I don't want to. And then they stop. And so I think there's like, there's the range. But I mean, one thing that I kind of went into like 25 with, it was that like more often than not, if a client comes to me with a crazy goal, I want to say, yes, we should totally jump into that, like with shit, because I think that maybe we need to do that more often with stuff. Maybe we do need to stretch a little bit and set the big crazy goals, but then go through all of the work that Danica's talked about with like the why do you want to do this? What do you see at the end of it? What are you going to gain along the way and stuff like that to get there and really fucking test it. But you have to go into it saying we're going to really test it. And then like if we need to renegotiate or we need to change things, that's always a possibility. But I do think that sometimes going into it preparing for that, oh, I could always just skip a workout if I wanted to, or I could just, it's not that big of a deal if we go out to eat. Like, and we're already giving ourselves like these parameters of like, well, I guess I don't really have to try.
But that's a different mindset completely. That's not
I,
even what I'm talking about.
but that's
That's a 1 foot in, 1 foot out mindset. Like that is completely different than I'm going to do anything that it takes, no matter what
oh
I
yeah.
have to give up to do this. And granted, there are some goals that are probably worth that, and there's some things out there that are, and I'll agree with you.
Maybe people
Uh,
should know about, like, maybe
but
that's what
right,
they need to put that up against. Like, is this something that I'm willing to do anything it takes and why? Like, for instance, I am willing to, mm, I was gonna say,
Mm,
I was
Now
gonna
I'm really
say,
curious.
I'm willing to. Well, maybe not.
I was,
What is it? What's in your
I was
mind
gonna
that's
say,
amazing?
I am willing to do anything that it takes to make sure I have a healthy marriage. And then I was like,
Oh,
maybe there are some boundaries here, but not everything. But I'm
so
willing to
curious what came to mind that you're like,
let's let's have our minds wander. But I think that it is important to make sure that could be a whole nother episode. I think it is important to have some things like I am willing to do the hard work to be a good mom. Like I'm willing to put in the effort, right? There should be big things in life that you're like, yes, like I will do that. I will absolutely do what it takes to make sure that my marriage is healthy or my kids are safe or whatever that is, right? But maybe the people need to reflect on that, Stephen, of I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And then say, like, for this goal, like, would you be willing? Okay, cool. You're willing to do whatever it takes to step on stage. Would you put that same mentality of I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be a really good mother? Is that of equal?
I don't think they're equal, and I think there's difference there too. Because if I say, "Are you willing to do whatever it takes to get on stage to be at this level?" and it's going to take 10 years off of your life possibly, versus, okay, if you're going to do whatever it takes to be the best mother you can be, is that going to have that same impact?
Right. So thinking
So
deeper
this,
in it, what does that mean? What
right,
does that look like? If you are willing to do whatever it takes and whatever it takes looks like this, are you still willing to do it?
right. And I think that's a different conversation, different story. But the problem is, and this is where I think it's a misconception, nobody, people don't understand what it actually takes. They don't understand the actuality of what those goals entail. Just like I have no idea what it would take to be the best parent in the world. Because one, I'm not going to be, let's be real, be a good one, but I'm not going to be the best one.
And you're on like -5 of negative self-talk.
And we're gonna
Anyways,
beat you up. Okay.
no, I just said I would be a good one, but realistically, there's n no way to even quantify being the best parent ever.
There isn't. No.
So thanks. Get out of here. I'm a realist. You know who I am.
So it is important to think the depth of your goal. Like essentially that's what you're saying. Like what does it take? And I do think that it is important sometimes to like when I was told, oh my gosh, like 25 years ago maybe, really long time ago. Go after the dream that scares you the most but excites you at the same time. And I loved that. Like I forgot what his name was, but he told me this and it was before I started competing. I was like, I love that because you should want to go after pretty wild things, right? But you should also think about what that means. Like, what does that actually mean? And maybe I do feel that as coaches, it's part of our responsibility to be like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Let's also now start to have a conversation about what this actually means. And like we can say, yeah, man, I'm right by your side and I will help support you, but I want to really talk about like, let's kind of sift through this a little bit more. And what does it actually mean? What sacrifices, like, why haven't we done this yet? How come you haven't achieved it yet? And what are our baseline stuff right now? And what does it mean long term, like short term, long term? What does this mean? What tools are you going to gain? What things are you going to lose? And what is the impact of it on like your life now and 5, 10 years from now too?
Word.
I thought Christina would have something there,
I did
but
it.
nope.
Well,
Well, I mean,
I love Christina's like, yes, like, yes, let's do it. But there should be a yes, dot, dot, dot. Like, and let's talk a little bit more about this. Like, can we also go after this goal? But I'm going to challenge you. I want to make sure that everything else in your life that's really important is still in harmony as we
Right.
go after this goal, if that's what you want. Maybe some people like to be not in harmony. Maybe that's their jam. That's a great, like, that's good for you. But I think that you should be in harmony with the things that you love in life, and
Yeah.
you should want that. So what does your goal entail? And how many shifts do you have to make? And why haven't you gotten to your goal yet? Because that's a lot of people that are on the same path that are coming to us that have already been on the hamster wheel. There's a reason why they're like repeating, right? Like, let's not do the same thing over and over again. There's a reason why we're still stuck in the same rut.
I
I
mean,
mean, there's all the physiological misconceptions too. Like, no matter what I do, I'm never going to look like Bumstead. No matter what you do, you're never going to look like, whoever else on stage,
Yeah.
right? And then on top of that, things that we may or may not be willing to do, that those individuals did to assess their physiques or enhance their physiques, whatever it might be. So, and we talked about that, a couple weeks ago on how, talking about the new division and being able to be a natural athlete and not having to put yourself in a position to maybe do PEDs that you're not comfortable with, to put on the muscle to match something else. So, but even like for some people, it doesn't matter. Like you can do everything, and it's still just not going to happen. Right? Like the bodies are what they are. For bodybuilding, most people who are going to be really successful in the sport, they was determined when they were born. Like that's when that decision was made. Same thing. Like I'm never going to be a new Usain Bolt. I don't have the same biomechanics. It's never going to happen. And so, I think for bodybuilding and physique stuff in particular, there's this misconception that you can do everything and you're gonna be that person. You're gonna look like them. You're gonna get that spot. You're gonna get that thing, and that's just not true. And that is why in physique bodybuilding stuff in particular, I think I'm so much more emphatic about this idea that like you shouldn't. If you have that potential, you're gonna know early on that you have some really big potential in the sport to do stuff or to get to that level. For most people, you might even get to the pro level and do well and be in the mix, but like maybe we're never gonna be an Olympia winner, right? And that's the goal. That's You have to be realistic and honest with what you are going to be able to do and what it's going to take to even get there, and understand that because somebody else did some crazy shit, that don't it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And if anything, it might be worse the worst thing for you to do. Because I've definitely told people, no, I'm not going to support you in this on multiple occasions throughout my career, and ended the coaching relationship because I was like, I'm in an objective position. I don't have emotions set into their thing. I'm not involved in that. So I can take a step back and say, this is a really bad thing for you overall.
Yeah. And I think with that though is like we've talked about this before where you have to frame what your expectations are for your involvement with stuff, right? And if you're not somebody who you can immediately look at and be like, oh my God, they are naturally gifted for this sport. And like, yes, they are already kind of a leg up because sometimes you see people who are just, it's going to fucking work out well, right? And if it's somebody where you can see they're having trouble and stuff, and they're just continuously banging their head against the wall with it, and the only thing that's going to make them happy in that situation is being chosen. Because that's what it is, right? Bodybuilding is just having a group of people choose you. Like they could secretly like brunettes more than blondes. And whether or not they say that out loud and put it on their scorecard, they might just spend more time looking at one over the other because they enjoy it more. It's just a sport where it's not the same as like there's not a stopwatch involved, right? Where, well, the stopwatch said this. And so you have to have a certain level of thickness to your skin, or you have to be happy with what you accomplished and have that ability, which is really, really hard to truly have to say yes. No matter what, as long as I gave it my all, I will be pleased with the efforts at the end of this because I know that I did everything I could. I cannot control who shows up on show day, but I can control my variables. In that situation, I am all fucking for it. I am never going to win an ultra. If I did, oh my God, I might fall off the mountain. But like, that's not my goal. Like, my daughter asked the other day, we were in the car, and she was like, Mom, who's making you run for that long? I was like, no one. Me. I just like it. I like to try and see each, like with this, the Colfax Marathon that I do every year. Like, I just want to see if I can at least meet what I've done before or if I can get a little bit better. And the most fucked up part about that is my race time has gotten worse every single year I've done it. And I then spend the first 10 minutes after I cross the finish line sitting there pouting into my post-race beer, a little bit annoyed with it. And then eventually it catches up to me that, like, hey, but I get to say I've done it one, two, three, four times, and I've continued to work on this as life has changed and stuff. But you do, those are the people I won't take into prep or that I won't take into competitions if they are not going to be able to handle that shit.
So let me ask you this. Would you feel the same way if you knew that what you were doing and what they were doing put them at risk for a heart attack or for kidney disease and shutdown? Because
Right.
this is what happens to people. They go into the gym
Yeah.
in the New Year's, they get rhabdomyolysis, right? They cut water for shows and do diuretics, and they have heart attacks in hotel rooms, right? Like this is the reality of what happens for some of these people, and that is what I'm talking about. Like people need to stay the fuck away from.
Yeah.
Like this is not just I'm working really hard and like it was really challenging and it was difficult. This is I'm doing stuff that can end a marriage, end my life, and other, end my financial ability to support myself, those kind of things. Like I'm talking about when it gets to the point of like addictive behavior tendencies that don't have any kind of thought process for outcome.
Yeah.
Because I know you and I know damn well you'd be like, fuck no.
Right. No, I've gotten rid of clients in that situation where it's like, I'm not going to be a part of you destroying your life. Like your $200 a month doesn't like lift me
Right.
about.
So I feel like what you're talking about, it's on the end of that range, but it's the range still,
Yeah.
right? We're not going to die from it. Like, yeah, you could get hurt in a marathon, you could do, but you're probably not going to die. You're going to drink water. You're going to have your stuff. You're going to do it as intelligently as possible, right? Like, it's an extreme thing that takes extreme stuff, but like unless some freak accident happens and a moose comes and tramples you while you're out,
No, who
you're probably okay.
the people who get hurt in those situations, because it does happen. I mean, at a lot of marathons, there not a lot of them, but I mean, at least once a year, I will hear about somebody who collapsed as they crossed the finish line from hyponatremia or like something. And um, it's a lot of times people who you find out afterwards got into it with zero training or without enough training. There was a guy who was super transparent about it on his Instagram, where he decided he was going to try and cut weight going into the Leadville 100, which is here in Colorado, and it's like one of the highest elevation races, and it's a
It
100
is the highest
miles.
elevation town in
Mhm.
the continental United States.
Yep, and you go through Hope Pass, and I mean it's brutal on it's 100 miles, so you're most people are doing it overnight and everything on their own. But then you're adding in elevation and everything. And he tried to cut weight with his training going into it. And this was somebody who's a well-trained individual, but because he fucked around with nutrition, he had to pull and with rhabdo at like mile 64, and they had to try and get his body down to lower elevations really fast. It caused like months and months of problems afterwards. And again, it's an instance of somebody thinking that they're going to skirt the system and that they are smarter than the people who have done it successfully and that they can do it faster or they can do it with less and like, oh, I'm just, I'm good enough. I'm going to figure it out. And like, that's where shit goes wrong. And I mean, just more often than not, like, the sprint is going to cause a lot more issues than the time taken to properly prepare and do something that makes sense for you and your body or you and your lifestyle. I have a client right now where we finished prep in early November. She got really good feedback. Like literally, it was just could have pulled a couple more pounds off and it would have been perfect. And then she now is looking at maybe wanting to do some of the natural shows going into 25. And with her work schedule and her family schedule and trips and everything, she wants to do that show in Pittsburgh. And so we would have to do a natural qualifier beforehand. And she's looking at doing, we're going to have to start prep next week. And so we haven't had a ton of time off. We did get calories to a good place, but they're going to Punta Cana on a trip with their son and they're like chaperoning it the week after. And so it's not like a family vacation, it's like a school thing and they're going and chaperoning. And then we would extend the prep, right? Because she'd be going into the show in May. So that wouldn't be the end of it. And so she laid out all of the possible hurdles that we'd be looking at. And she's like, but I'm okay with it if you are. And so I was like, okay, well, I mean, if you're really okay with it, then like, I don't think this is out of this world. It's a little intense and like not what I would have chosen, but I understand with your year, this is how stuff's going to work. But like, let's deal with this next week. Go talk to Eddie. Like, go talk to your partner again about this whole situation and the what it's going to look like with us diving back in, what that trip is going to look like, what diving into something immediately afterwards, and like go have those conversations and understand that because we just finished this shit, I'm going to have to get pretty mean with what we have to do probably to get to where you want to be because we haven't had long enough. So like, yes, we've reverse dieted up, but we're probably going to have to be pretty brutal to get to the place we need because last time they told us we weren't quite there with conditioning. And so it like, but for her, one of the, like, she's just genuinely excited to get up there and see where she stacks up, right? She wants to do well, but a pro card is not the end all be all of her life and the only thing that she's focused on when it comes to that. And I feel like having that healthy side of it, like, like I said before, like if there's somebody who's just going to be gifted to be a pro, like dive all in, go for it, But I think that maybe there is more people who could use a bit of that shove of the let's test the limit a little bit, but also let's not be idiots about how this affects our life and the lives of those around us.
Yeah. You're going to have good support and a good coach and also good friends, like, or a good partner, like when you are going after goals. Because I could imagine with the new year, there are probably a lot of people who are like, I'm gonna do a fast. I'm gonna start shooting myself up with something. Like I'm gonna try this little hers GLP-1 baloney. I'm going to do something like that. And then other friends are like, me too. Me too. Not knowing like what are these things going to cause, right? So you have to be able to make sure that when you consult, you should probably consult with someone with your goals. And then the person that you consult with, have like a good conversation of like, yes or no, the health impacts, the social impacts that it's going to have. And I just think that sometimes people maybe don't do that, or they don't think the depth of it, or consider all things. Like that's our job, right? To tell people, I don't really like this. This doesn't align with my moral compass. Or are you sure about this? Because this is what it looks like. And that kind of frightens me a little bit. You should have somebody that says that to you.
Oh, if your coach isn't doing that when you come to them with a crazy idea, I mean,
Yeah, your coach should ask questions. Like
yeah.
your coach
It's
should
our
ask
job to
questions.
inform you of the reality of what you're trying to do. Not to necessarily make a decision for you, but to say, okay, well, this takes this. This is probably what this is going to have to look like. We could maybe do this, give you other options, and say, okay, this is probably what it's going to be.
Right. And also you should ask questions. Like don't be naive. Don't be an idiot. Like I wish I was definitely an idiot when I just followed what was right and probably came really close to like being in the hospital. What an idiot move. I'm more intelligent than that, but I think a lot of people just follow, and you should probably ask yourself some questions too along the way.
Well, because with a lot of the stuff that Stevens brought up, like when you had said, um, when you were bringing up the two different goals and you were like, if being your best at this would take 10 years off of your life, right? I do think there are like an alarming number of people that if you were like, okay, well, if you got to have the body of a winning, bodybuilding competitor for the next 30 years, would you be willing to like cut things short? And I mean, based off of actions, there's more people that would probably be willing to gamble with it and be like, well, that's not going to happen to me. Like, yeah,
Gamble because it can't be guaranteed. Because
right.
that's another thing. Like nobody can guarantee you any physique or anything. So like maybe guaranteed to make progress, whatever. But like there's nobody in the world that can come up to you and say, I guarantee you're going to look like Chris Bumstead. Here's the trade-off.
Right.
It just can't be done.
Yeah. I feel like this one did not go where we thought it was going to go, but I love it.
Hey, look, and neither nor Danica nor I shared, terrible, terrible secrets about our lives.
They don't know about that episode that
Nobody knows about that
that
episode.
ever
It
was.
But
doesn't
that
exist
was such a
anymore.
good
It
episode.
was such a good one. And so we had an episode that was supposed to go out for you guys, oh gosh, around Christmas. Um, and when I went to edit it and get everything up, it just went black at 26 minutes. And there was just nothing. Like the recording showed a whole hour and a half, but I didn't have any video. And then we checked the audio too, and it just died for whatever reason. And
Yeah, the universe was like, not today.
right. And I never go through like the whole ones. And with that one, I had started out and I was like doing different stuff and was waiting for like a period to like edit with things. And I was like super into it. And then it just died while I was sitting there and I'm like, well, shit. And so if anyone knows how to rescue those things from Zoom or if that's a thing, the download was just, I have a shitty download still sitting on my computer if there's a way to fix it. But that was a good one. Everyone got very vulnerable. Is vulnerable the right word or just honest? Maybe just honest. It was a good one. We'll have
I
to
don't
figure
know.
out a way to get that, to pull that out of our butts again. Since we shoot from the hip for a lot of these, that's the hard part, is we have to find like what was the like trigger for stuff. But yeah. You guys got any closing word for our folks to keep them from quitting day, the day after
Oblivion,
it comes out? What'd you say?
pancreas, oblivion,
Hopefully
No,
not oblivion,
everyone should just
axolotl.
stay focused. But think about your goal. Don't think about your purpose, your why, like the intention behind it, and why not keep going? Like, unless it's a really good reason and like it's becoming detrimental to you, but you're never gonna know unless you try.
Yeah. One day at a time. I like it can be so helpful, I think, because even when you're setting big goals that you're really excited about, it can be really hard to get caught up in what's to come. But like work on today. And if today was shit and it didn't go the way you wanted to, like that's fine. It was just today. There's always tomorrow and you can try it differently. But don't make it to the next Friday. And then in our comments, tell us if you made it past quitting day because you can do something for one more day. I assure you that you can hold on to your program for at least one more day and then just continuously kick that can down the road. Steven's muted. So
I don't have anything else to say. I thought we were ending it there.
you're just gonna leave us? You're just gonna leave us hanging all muted?
Yeah.
All right, guys, we will talk to you next time.